Hi everybody. Something a little bit different from my usual horror novel reviews. A few days back when I was doing my Nightmare on Elm Street remake review and defense as I called it, before doing that I went on IMDb and a few websites to read some feedback from other people on that film, and one of the lines that kept coming up was something like, this is the worst film ever made, or this is the worst film I've ever seen. And if that's honestly what people think, then that's fine. I'm not going to take away at all from their experience. But when I read stuff like that about things like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake or the Prom Night remake or the Fog remake, you can argue that those are very bad films, but to suggest that they're the worst films ever made leads me to think that maybe this person hasn't explored some of the delights of ultra low budget horror, or in some cases like big budget horror. But there are some truly terrible films out there, and what I want to do here is just showcase in my opinion, the 10 worst films that I have in my collection. I think like every horror fan, like every horror collector, we have, or at least I have, hundreds of awful films in my collection here, but these are 10 notable ones that are awful for reasons that I think are worth saying something about. So I generally really don't like to be negative in life, generally, but on this channel in particular. I prefer to just try and find the positive in things. And please don't think that well, with one or two exceptions, I will be criticizing the filmmakers here. But in general, this isn't meant to demean anyone who took part in the making of these films. It's just to at least you did something I've never done, all of you. You went out there, you made films, you got your films made. And with, like I said, with two exceptions in this list, I have respect for everyone who made these films. I just thought it would be a good idea to push back a little bit on the notion that stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street remake or the Fog remake is one of the worst films ever made. So, with that introduction out of the way, here is number 10 on my 10 worst films in my collection. It's something called Slaughter Tapes. And the cover looks great, and dramatic and gripping. What a gem from some random user on something called horror.net. That's the only recommendation, the only quote on the thing. And it sounds good, it really does. It sounds intriguing. I think everyone who bought it on the strength of the design of the cover. But it's just, it's found footage. It's boring, and it doesn't make any sense. In the middle of the film, I mean, the first half of the film is like this guy interviewing sex workers, and you think it's going to be some kind of like that Nick Cage film, 8mm, or that British horror film Shuttle, something like that. And it is, I don't know what it is, except completely and utterly tedious and pointless. So that's number 10. Number 9 is a film called What Really Frightens You. Now, this was directed by Richard Haynes, who did the also terrible but very enjoyable 80s slasher film Splatter University. And this is a very short film. Not sure why he made it, because as with almost all of these films, it doesn't make any sense. It's terribly acted and written and directed. So, I do actually watch this now and again because it does have some so bad it's good moments which make it enjoyable, but it's a dreadful film. So that one is number 9. In at number 8 is a British film called The Coven, which I've seen on a few worst lists. And by the way, can you guess which film they were trying to rip off here? Yeah, it's a very amateur film, this. The acting is terrible. No idea who these girls are in the cover because they're not in the film. Boring and nonsensical. Next one is this, which I had high hopes for because I love possessed doll films. Anna, by the Crumb Collective. This one is, the director of photography is Michael Crumb, written by Gerald Crumb, executive producer Rick Crumb. There is obviously a very easy pun I could make there on their names, but I won't. It's really bad. It's amateurish. And what frustrates me is that this one and a few of the other ones I'm showing here, you can find all of these in HMV, in every store of HMV in England for like $5.99 or even more expensive. These are sold and marketed as legitimate films rather than what they are, which is ultra low budget amateur filmmaking. And even though I picked this up second hand for pennies, you would be really annoyed if you spent proper money on this, which looks great. It sounds great in the synopsis. You think it's going to be another kind of like an Annabelle thing, but, you know, better than that. And it isn't. It's a student film. Really poorly done. And I don't know how that happens, how these people manage to get their films distributed in HMV, whereas there's tons of really brilliant independent horror filmmakers who can't get their films released for love nor money. Next, on those lines is this next thing, Land of Smiles. I think what happened here is the Australian guy who made this had himself a camera, and he was on holiday in Thailand, and he thought, if I just film a bunch of random stuff on the beach, throw in this random clown, and tell everyone I've made a horror film, I'll be able to market it. And he did. Again, credit to him. It says here, from award-winning writer-director Bradley Stryker, but it doesn't say what he won awards for. I'll be very surprised if it's for filmmaking, because this, again, is a travelogue, which, forget about all of this imagery on the back. There's nothing like that. And the little synopsis there is appropriately vague, because it's an hour of someone on a holiday and then this kid clown thing thrown in to pretend it's a horror film, and it's got an 18 certificate because, you know, that again will it lead people to believe that it's horror when it really isn't. Boring, and it's in every single HMV shop in England, and I bought this in HMV. I got it on a 2 for £10 deal, this and another film which I really like called Killer Inc. These were two blind buys. One of them paid off. This one was awful. Now we're into the top 5 with Mirror Mirror 3, The Voyeur. If your idea of a great horror film is watching Billy Drago bare-ass naked in a soft porn film, then you need this film in your life. But if you're more interested in things like, you know, a coherent story, good acting, a script that makes sense, then give this one a wide berth. I really like Mirror Mirror, the original one with Rainbow Harvest, and I really do like the second one as well, Raven Dance. But what on earth this has to do with any of that, I don't know. It implies in the subtitle there, The Voyeur. Yeah, this is just a weird erotic film with the... Well, I don't know, is Billy Drago considered a sex symbol? But why was he cast in this as the male lead? Don't know. And the fourth film also could have made this list, but I decided just to put that one on. Right, next one, number 4. I think most fans of horror have a sub-genre which they have to collect. And for me, it's any film connected with Ouija boards. I'm obsessed with films connected with Ouija boards. I think I've got every horror film ever released which involves a Ouija board, which has been released at least. And this is the worst of the bunch. This is directed by a guy called Israel Luna, who... he's made a lot of films, but he doesn't ever seem to get better at filmmaking. They're all the same. They're all really... He tends to use the same crew as well. They're just so poor. And this, I didn't know this when I got it, but apparently this is the sequel to a previous Ouija film he'd made. And the film doesn't do a very good job of letting you know that. It just kind of assumes that we know who these characters are and what they've been through already. Awful film. Terrible film. I keep it only because... Well, I generally never throw away films no matter how bad they are, but I have to keep it because of the Ouija thing, you know, for my Ouija collection. Next one is a very... probably the worst made film on this list, The Goatman Murders. 101 Films, for me, 101 Films is like the trauma of the UK. You never know what you're going to get. It could be really great. They released stuff like All Hallows Eve. Or it could be atrocious, which this is. But again, look, it looks great, doesn't it? It sounds great. The Goatman Murders, and it's got a spooky little synopsis there, and it's got a made-up quote by some random person who you can never verify. Really bad, very poor taste at the end. Stupid, and it's a student film again. It's like, well, not even a student film. I don't think these people went to film school. It's just a bunch of young people who've got themselves a camera and decided to spend an hour filming themselves doing stupid stuff. And then slipping in what, you know, supposedly horrific scenes, but which are so amateurishly done. It's another one of those films. If you went to HMV, you saw this, you might pick it up, you might spend real money on that. And 101 Films, I think they've misled the customer there. Speaking of which, number 2, Paranormal Captivity, The Haunting, from 88 films. That blows my mind that 88 films released this. And again, an IMDb quote from surely the the guy who made it. I'll come to that in a minute. Yeah, so originally this was called Dead Collections, a play on debt collections, because the antagonist is a debt collector. But they decided to seize on the paranormal activity thing and renamed it to Paranormal Captivity, even though it has zero connection with anything paranormal activity. Looks good, beautiful slipcover, sounds great. Awful. There is a scene in this where the main actor, the bad guy, who also is the writer, producer, the auteur behind this, he's dumping a girl's body in the bathtub. And as he's doing it, his backside smashes into the camera that's placed right behind him. You can't even see the action, but he hits the camera and it shakes really, really violently. And they just left it in. No second take. It's like something out of Ed Wood. They just left it in there. And there's so many things like that in this film. And again, I've said it so many times, but you can find this in every HMV for normal DVD prices. You would be so annoyed if you picked this up expecting a nice, creepy film, and what you ended up with was a bunch of utterly, I'm sorry, but talentless people who just have no understanding of how to make a film. Everything in this film is bad. And what's amazing about this is there's a making of documentary on the special features where they honestly seem to think they've done good work here. They're bigging themselves up. Yeah, awful. And my number 1 worst film in my collection is the Amityville Playhouse. I own every Amityville film that has received an official release, and most of them are dreadful. This one takes the cake. This is astonishingly bad filmmaking, and you'll be happy to know this is the last time I'm going to say this, but you can find this in every HMV. And I've seen people pick this up and take it to the cash desk and buy it on the strength of this cover art and what sounds like a fantastic premise and some spooky imagery there on the back. And each time I've wanted to say, save yourself the money, just trust me on this one. It's not what you think it will be. But obviously I don't do that. It's not my place. But the shamelessness of the makers, two of these guys, but the main one is this guy, John Walker. The shamelessness involved to make this non-Amityville, boring, stupid thing and slap the Amityville name on it and put it in shops and trick people into thinking that they're going to be watching a film remotely connected with the Amityville story, or a film which has a modicum of professionalism to it. I can't imagine doing that. Like I said, the guy who made this, John Walker, he's also the main actor. He's written for himself a bizarre role. I mean, at the start of this film, he's a teacher, and one of his teenage students has just inherited a theatre. And there's a weird little piece of dialogue at the beginning where he gets her to stay behind after class, and he muscles his way into her private life, and he says, "I will look into this theatre of yours." The line he says is, "That will give me something to do with my weekend." Creepy, weird middle-aged guy telling a teenage girl that he's going to stick his nose into her private business in order to have something to do with his weekend. And it's weird. And there are scenes in this which this guy goes to the pub on 3 separate occasions and has these boring, non sequitur conversations with these other random characters. And it's almost like the guy is making a film in which he's showing himself having friends who are interested in talking to him. He comes across as a very odd person. I don't mean the character, I mean the guy himself. I say that not only on the strength of this film. I kind of did a little research on who on earth he is, and he just seems like a bit of an oddball. Awful film. At some point I may actually do a full review of this film to talk about it in more detail, because I do actually watch this now and again in certain moods, just because I'm in awe of how bad this is. If you've seen, any time there's an Amityville ranking list on YouTube, this is always the last one. This isn't a controversial opinion I'm saying here. All right, so that's the worst film in my collection. There's one which I left off because although it is one of the worst films ever made, it happens to be a film that I absolutely love with every inch of my soul, it's this one, Howling 7 New Moon Rising, the one with all the line dancing. This is commonly considered to be one of the worst films ever made, and it certainly is on an objective level. But at some point I do want to do a full-length video on this as well to explain why I adore this film with a passion. So that one's not there. Children of the Corn 666 isn't on this list because I also happen to like that one. Hellraiser 8 isn't on this list because that one has things going for it. There's a lot of films which often appear on worst lists, which I haven't put on this one. I just wanted to do the ones which I personally think are the worst ones. So that's going to do it for this top 10 worst films in my collection video. Excuse me for all the coughing. Thanks for watching this, if you did watch this far, and soon I'll be getting back to the horror novel reviews. So take care everybody, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.